Hello, this is Ron Barfknecht with another Daily Dose with Ron Barfknecht. Tonight's topic is the acquisition of capability of the Communist Chinese yesterday to intercept and destroy a satellite in high space orbit. Now, the Chinese blessedly destroyed one of their old weather satellites themselves. That did not pick on another nation's equipment. And of course, they refused to either acknowledge that the test took place or discuss any results of the test. However, they were tracked by the old NORAD space watchers, who saw the launch from the Chinese space drone and the interception and physical destruction of the Chinese satellite, 500 miles in orbit above the Earth. Now, this ceiling is far higher than most of the important U.S. and Allied communications and spy satellites. Now, one would wonder why the Chinese would want to do this in this era of rapprochement, as it were, between China and the West. Economic investment is booming. China is allowing finally Western investment, and their trading balance is growing. It's still heavily in China's favor, of course, but so one was wondered why they would risk diplomatic and economic harm for something so outlandish as the capability of destroying Western spy and communication satellites. The theory is that it is a rogue element of the People's Liberation Army, who are far more entrenched in Chinese politics and the economy than people really understand. They maintain their own factories. They operate somewhat autonomously. For example, Chinese forces have been massing for the last year opposite Taiwan. And, of course, the obvious conclusion the U.S., Canada, Australia, Britain, and other nations has taken is that the ability to destroy spy and communication satellites would be a prelude to a Chinese invasion of Taiwan, already stated as a casus belli for an act of war. What the Chinese would have is the capability of delivering a modern-day Pearl Harbor, since no one would know that they were there until they actually arrived. There would be no sense of deploying forces to meet a already seeing Chinese force, even in their own territory, because without the spy satellites and the GPS satellites and the communication satellites, the American AWACS planes could not have complete control over their fighters, since they would lack the intelligence as to where the enemy was and where they were coming, where they're coming from. The Chinese had developed a huge arsenal of shore-to-ship missiles that would tend to force the American or Allied carriers to stand off far from the Chinese coast, further inhibiting their extension of air power. And of course, surface ships would not be able to close and support Taiwan. Therefore, since Taiwan is China's only logical target, since they're not about to invade North Korea or the old enemy Russia to the north, the only logical reason they would take out satellites is to strike and have a de facto takeover of Taiwan, which is their last world province, as they call it. They've never acknowledged that Taiwan is other than a breakaway province of China. And to a certain extent, the world has recognized that when they gave Taiwan's former seat on the Security Council to the Republic of China, People's Republic of China, and unseated Taiwan in that sense. Now, what this means to the overall picture is the complete disparity between military capability, military mass force, and the lack of rationale for such a move. Canada would be blinded. If they take it to its complete logical extension, then all of our telephones would cease to work, our televisions, our communication satellites would be at risk, blanketing the whole country and basically sending us back to bows and arrows. Because none of our electronic equipment would be able to function properly. In fact, in a recent exercise against the Indian Air Force and Navy, the Americans were heavily defeated by antiquated Soviet MiGs and Sukhoi fighters when the umpires pulled the presence of the AWACS and GPS capabilities from the American fighters. They were basically blinded and were forced to react to Indian thrusts and moves in somewhat restricted windows of opportunity because they had to react to an initiative launched by the enemy, as it were. So without foreknowledge or planning or any intelligence at all, since our systems in modern times are completely based on a technological superiority. Now, if this technological superiority is eliminated by any means, then it takes away any sense of operating on initiative because you don't know where the enemy is, you don't know where they're coming from, you don't know where they're going. Now, what does this mean to Canada? Well, Canada is part of CETO, which is the Southeast Asia Treaty Organization. And we are as concerned as any other member of the alliance about the Chinese moves. And they're becoming increasingly bolder because now Chinese submarines are cruising through Japanese home waters, which creates political tension between the ancient enemies of China and Japan. There's uncertainty about the Chinese backing or not the nuclear aspirations of North Korea. They share a common ideology, as it were, Asian communism. So all of this creates an unsettling of many levels of the old relationships and the instability of the new relationships, because nobody really knows from all this who is actually in charge. So I think the protests are warranted, and I think we really have to keep an eye on that Pacific Rim, as it were, because things could go very bad very quickly unless the Chinese get themselves in order and clearly renounce any attempt to take over the province of Taiwan, or Formosa as they call it. And that's my view. This is Ron Barfknecht for the Daily Dose with Ron Barfknecht saying good night.